Kenya. As we begin today's session, I'd just like to take the opportunity to let everyone know that this meeting is going to be recorded. And everybody joining today's call will have access to the recording afterwards. We'll also share the presentation slides from our speaker, Dorothy, today. Great, okay. And as we're waiting for more people to arrive, I would suggest that let's get familiar with everyone in the room. So I'm asking for everyone to please type in the chat box your name, the country you're based in, and the name of your organization. So we'll take a few minutes to do that. Hello, Anna.
Hi.
Great. Okay. I'm Marissa. Yeah, and for those who's just come in, I think Mireia has just joined us. Yeah, please type in your name, your organization, and the country you're based in. Awesome. Hi, Kenza. Hi, Sipile. Wonderful. Okay, so thank you all again for joining us. And now I'd like to introduce one of our expert speakers here today. So I'd like to introduce Dorothy. Dorothy is from the Center for Environmental Justice and Development. Dorothy is a plastics and waste management campaigner at the organization. She has actively been working with waste pickers in Kenya and supporting their recognition and formalization. And later on this call, we'll be joined by John. And John is from the Kenya National Waste Pickers Welfare Association. John is the chair of the organization and has been a critical advocate for waste picker rights across the globe during the recent UNEA 5 discussions on a mandate for a plastic treaty. And so I thank them both for joining today's discussion and leading the conversation around waste picking. And here in the background, we also have Marissa Naidu and Yvonne Reddy from the GAIA team providing tech support. Thank you, guys. Great. Next slide, please. Okay, so for today, we have a very short agenda, but I wanted to give you a quick overview of what you can expect on this call. So we're going to kick off with a very short video to celebrate the life of Simon Imbata. Simon was our dearly departed friend from the national coordinator. He was the national coordinator of the South African Waste Pickers Association. And then we're going to head over to Dorothy, who will be giving us some practical methods and strategies for working with waste pickers. And then we'll have a close with a Q&A session where both Dorothy and John will answer your questions. So during the session, please be sure to add any of your questions to the chat and we'll make sure that we get to them. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So on the 1st of March, we learned that our dearly departed colleague, Simon Imbata, had passed away. Simon was the national coordinator of SALPA. He was based at the Vaal Park Recycling Center in Sasolburg, South Africa. Simon was an advocate for waste picker rights across the globe and was a true embodiment of activism. And we have prepared this very short video to celebrate his work and his advocacy.
waste pickers, more than 100 years ago, have been the backbone of recycling. No one recognizes that. Long before the concept of the green economy, we existed. No one recognized that. Long before the concept of zero waste, we existed. No one recognizes that. So the organization is to fight for the recognition of waste pickers. When people were talking, countries were talking about climate debt, no one recognized how much is owed to the waste pickers in terms of mitigating the emissions. That's why we took a lead in the climate debt to say that we are owed a climate debt as waste pickers for our role, for what we've been doing for the past 100 years, even before COP existed.
Recognize, respect our job. It plays an important part in emission mitigation.
An example, food packaging. There's a lot of packaging plastic which is non-recyclable, and you can see the reason might be a form of disposal in a way or in a form of a packaging. So we've been calling on government to say if it's not recyclable, it shouldn't be produced in the first place.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to remember Simon with us. And we ask that you continue to keep his family in your thoughts. Wonderful. And so now I will hand it over to Dorothy, who will take us through some of Sejad's learned strategies and methodologies for working with waste pickers.
Thank you, Carissa. Thank you, the GAIA team, for having us today to talk about and share the work that we have been doing with the waste pickers in trying to get them to organize and champion for their rights. So this photo that you're seeing here is the Kenya National Waste Pickers Association leadership at a press conference on 1st of March when is the International Waste Pickers Day. And they were here trying to urge the government to recognize that what they do is important for the nation, is important for the climate, that they need to be recognized in the work that they do in the reduction of waste and bringing back materials into the value chain of waste management, and also just to be given covers such as medical covers, to be given identity cards, so that they're just recognized as much as other people are recognized. So this was him giving that statement. So the objectives so the National Waste Pickers Welfare Association was formed last year, and in their constitution, these are some of the objectives that they set out that they would like to see at the end of or during their work. That one, first, that the nature of the society is not for profit. So this is a requirement that each time you're registering an association, it has to be that it is not for profit. And then the other thing is to consider and promote all matters affecting the welfare of waste pickers within Kenya, to bring together all the relevant stakeholders and institutions in matters of prevention, reduction, recovery, and disposal of waste, and to empower the waste picker with skills and technologies required in this business. So this is about networking, because it's impossible to do their work and for others to recognize them if there's no networking involved. to liaise with local, international organizations and like-minded individuals on matters of mutual interest, such as environmental awareness and promotion of sustainable environmental conservation and legislation, which is still happening in UNEM, to promote and improve general conditions of its needy and vulnerable members. Because we know the state of waste speakers right now is that they are vulnerable because they're excluded from the laws. And this is one of the objectives that they want to see themselves, their conditions improve. To remain connected and informed about issues of common concern and benefit. Yes, just to be aware so that they're not overtaken by events, and to keep holding the stakeholders and duty bearers accountable on issues waste speakers and waste management in a part that they play, and to develop a sense of responsibility with the members' conduct by offering capacity building, knowledge dissemination, training, sensitization, thus promoting the general welfare of the members. So this is in terms of improving their knowledge, improving their skills, so that they're not just stuck where they are, but there's some element of growth. And then to morally, socially, and psychologically support the needy and distressful members. So of course, there's an aspect of welfare in here where they're able to support now their membership to who are a bit needy because they're different, some are better than others, but to help those who are needy. Next slide, please. So this is also another photo on the 1st of March. So one other important thing is that John, the farthest left, was at the UNEA supporting the call for a legally binding treaty to end plastic pollution. And he joined other global members, waste speakers, to be able to put out a petition that saw them being recognized in the resolution that was adopted that gives the mandate for beginning to negotiate a legally binding instrument by the end of 2020. So this was him at the UNEA. Next slide, please. So thank you, Niven. So ideally, my presentation starts here, and with partnership from GAIA and with support from Sage Fund, we were able to implement a project which we called Stimulating Effective Alliances and Networking for Waste Speakers in Kenya. I'll talk more about it as we go. So who is SEJAD? SEJAD is a public interest non-governmental organization based in Kenya. And what that means is that we take the complaints of the public and take them to the decision makers and try to advocate for better environmental situations, especially in issues around chemicals and waste management. Our mission is sound chemicals management to protect the environment and the well-being of people, especially the vulnerable population. We are at the center of voicing the concerns of the vulnerable populations in occasions where they can't do that for themselves. And we are accredited and observers to the UNEP and the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention. And we are participating organization of global networks such as Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, International Pollution Elimination Network, Break Free from Plastics, Zero Mercury Working Group, and World Alliance for Mercury-Free Dentistry. And we have been here since 2012. Next slide, please. So we have quite a bit of program areas. On mercury, we have a program on mercury elimination in artisanal and small-scale gold mining. We also have a program there on phase out of mercury added products, for instance, lamps, switches, and mercury creams and other products. And we also have a program on mercury-free dentistry to eliminate the use of mercury in dental filling. We also have a program on elimination of lead in paints to reduce or completely eliminate the quantities of lead in paints. We have another program on elimination of use of highly hazardous pesticides. And then we have a program on zero plastics and waste management campaign, which is where this program or this conversation today falls. Thank you. Next slide. So a little bit of background. What we wanted to do at the beginning or when we were considering this project was to stimulate alliance of waste pickers. How do they come together? And this is because their working conditions have been poor for the longest time. They don't have personal protective equipment. They don't have identity cards. They don't have the necessary infrastructure. So there are a lot of challenges when it comes to waste picking and the status quo. And what we wanted to do is assist them to come together, to form associations in order for them to use those associations to collectively champion for their rights in one voice. The objective was just to enhance the legal status and collective action, like I have mentioned. And in terms of formalization was how do we then formalize this association so that it is recognized, because it being there without necessarily being recorded anywhere legally is also just another informal situation. So we wanted it to be registered, for them to come together, be registered, and also just increase their influence in the formulation and implementation of policies around solid waste management. It's not enough to collectively come together, but what are you going to do with that voice? And so it will be to work together with government institutions to formulate policies that involve them and also ensure those policies are implemented. At the end of at the right side, the photo there is just waste speakers coming together to also have that conversation about how they're going to work together. So this was an initial mobilization photo. Next slide, please. As we were beginning our work, most of it was all about going to the dump site. We had already met waste speakers before. And I keep telling this story that when Simon had come here to Kenya, they were having a meeting in Kisumu together with Vigo that Vigo had organized. He made a point of seeing waste speakers in Kenya in order to share their experiences and skills in terms of what they have done in South Africa insofar as mobilization and forming an association is concerned. And when he was here, he met a few waste speakers and they had discussions. And it's from that meeting that we had takeaways. When the waste speakers decided that they wanted to have an association, they wanted to reach where South Africa had reached in terms of waste speakers coming together to champion for their rights. So we took that forward. And when we were starting the project, we had a few challenges here and there. For instance, lack of trust amongst waste speakers. So one thing is that the waste speakers have been used to work individually. So going there to tell them that you could work as an association was a bit difficult because the most that they were used to was welfare groups, bringing their money together to be able to improve their livelihoods. But most of them were not willing to even join those welfare groups. And that was even before we started our work. So there was a little bit of mistrust. They didn't want to join a welfare association and neither did they want to join an association. Another issue in terms of lack of trust was that these waste speakers in the dump sites or any other transfer stations have been visited by so many NGOs, humanitarian, supported by humanitarian aid, government. And at the end of the day, when you ask them how that benefited them, they'll tell you these people normally just come and they go, but we don't see any change. So there was that aspect of, yes, you'll come here and you'll tell us this and you'll give us maybe a few gumboots here and there, and then you will go. So that was the challenge that we're having. How do we get them to believe and understand that whatever we're trying to assist them do is going to be long-term and systemic and will bring a lot of change in the future rather than solving the issues at the moment. And so I remember a story by one of the waste speakers when he told us that one of the decision makers had gone to the dump site and had provided them with gumboots. And after a long speech, and after finishing that speech, that decision maker decided that he's going to collect all the gumboots. So as you can imagine, these people have a lot of mistrust. You're going to give us this just for show, and then you're going to take them away just because, I don't know why he took them away. It also beats me. I didn't understand that concept. But yes, so those are some of the reasons where the trust issues are coming from. Another issue we faced was COVID-19, because obviously at the beginning of our mobilization process, we were going to waste people. First of all, we did a reconnaissance. We went to various dump sites, except the ones whom we had already met with Simon here in Kenya. So we went to meet the actual waste speakers to find out how they work, what they're doing, and where is their station. And so after that is when we meet their leadership at that phase during the reconnaissance and tell them this is what is going to happen and this is how we'll be moving forward. we'll have a meeting that will be about sensitizing the waste speakers together. So at the first, in Nairobi, for instance, because our project covers 4 counties in Kenya, and these are the counties that were a bit urbanized before we were devolved. So this is Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, and Nakuru. So for Nairobi and Nakuru, we had already had this kind of sensitization meeting where we went to the dump site and we met the waste speakers over there. But because of COVID-19, it became very difficult to assemble waste speakers to try and do the sensitization. And so what happened is we had to go and meet each representative, or identify a representative in each dump site and meet him or her, for her or he, to be able to pass the message along. So it was a bit of a chain rather than it was before, because we were all engaging the waste speakers together. But COVID-19 made it difficult to do that. The other challenge was that there was a little bit of lack of long-term vision amongst the waste speakers on the benefits of the association. And this is not in a negative light, but waste speakers, because you remove them from their workstations, they want something very immediate. They want you to give them a certain amount of money, or they want you to give them or tell them they want to see immediate benefits. So this, there are a group of waste speakers who did not stay long enough to see the fruition of the association, and they left. But the ones who now carry the vision and saw the benefits in the long term were able to stay. But this is one of the challenges that I'm sure anyone who's trying to work with waste speakers will witness. There's some who will not be able to stay to be able to see this to fruition, and there's some who will actually stay and see their vision and carry the vision. Okay, there's also the issue of incentives to meet, because before you meet them, or after you have met them, you have to compensate them for their time, which they would have otherwise used or gotten from recovery of materials. So there's that aspect of it. The last other one is technological capacity. As you can imagine, the waste speakers rarely make a lot of money. They live mostly from hand to mouth, most of them. So they don't have enough money to even buy themselves phones, to even buy computers. They don't even see the need for having those skills. So when trying to organize and work with them, it was a bit difficult to have them even in our WhatsApp group for easy communication. So it means that you'll have to pass them. The message has to take longer to reach the vulnerable one of all of them. So it will have to go maybe through the chairman and through someone else before it actually reaches the actual speaker down there that we're trying to support to join the association. So this is another issue for them. And then also lack of knowledge on computers. Definitely, they don't have any business knowing any computer skills, because they're not going to meet computers anytime. And when it comes to actual work, for example, like having to type a document, for example, when they were registering their association, they had to reserve their name. It was a little bit difficult for them to even do the constitution on their own, because they needed support because they don't have. That's one of the other challenges. And then presence of advanced individuals who want to be termed as waste speakers. Okay, so when we were trying to assist the waste speakers to self-organize, because this was really their idea and their vision, we met a couple of people who were not actually waste speakers, but who wanted to drive the process and wanted to be termed as waste speakers. This is a challenge that will always occur, where there's an opportunity for the marginalized, the vulnerable people to benefit. There'll always be other people who will come and seem like they're the actual waste speakers when really they're not. So this has been a challenge that we've had to face more than once. And I will discuss about how we managed to get to it. Next slide, please. So how did we overcome the challenges? We had to continuously engage with the representatives, because during the COVID-19 period, we could say that we'll stay home and do nothing. We reached out to leaders of different dump sites or transfer stations, and they had one thing to do, was to reach out to their members, so that there's a continuation. And even those whom we had already sensitized, for example, now in Nairobi, they had a task. They were supposed to continue engaging their waste speakers. Because Dandora has so many people, for example, very many waste speakers work there. And so sensitizing about 30 people wasn't going to be enough to spread the message to about 1,500 to about 3,000 waste speakers, and that was as of 2010. So there was need to continue this mobilization and sensitization and continuous engagement with the representatives to enable them to be able to continue with the sensitization work. We had meetings with the waste speakers leaders. Of course, we had to visit the individual representatives at the dump sites, which is what I was explaining earlier. And then we had to begin, because on the issue of trust, we had to begin with those who have gained trust already. So for those ones who wanted to drop out, we did not say anything, because of course it's also the mandate of the leadership to convince them on what they're going to benefit afterwards. But that did not stop us. We just continued with the ones who are willing to organize and saw the benefits of that. And that is how we have been able to, together with the speakers, get to where we are today. Representatives who are driven and carry the goal of the association. So there was need to choose leaders who, first of all, were able to use social media and had smartphones for easier communication, knew how to type. And remember, these representatives are those who have been chosen by the waste speakers themselves. So we were nowhere imposing on who was to be a leader. No, we sat at the back, and the waste speakers themselves decided to choose who they would lead, who would be leading them. And as a result, they chose, for instance, John to be the chair of the National Association. And of course, John represents the vision and the goal of the association and the waste speakers who are left at the dump sites working. We had to have open dialogues to agree on a consensus. For those guys who were sort of like purporting to be waste speakers, there had to be a consensus. We had to understand, first of all, their perspective. What do you do? Who are you registered as? And it's from that conversation that we were able to sit down and say that, okay, if you are an NGO and you work with the waste speakers, then you still remain an NGO, but you have to let waste speakers drive the process and let them lead and let them be associated as waste speakers and organize as waste speakers. And you as an NGO have to step aside to be able to allow for that to happen. Next slide, please. So how SEJAD works with waste speakers. We provide the space. So first of all, I think in the assisting of waste speakers to formalize, that's one way in which we have been able to see waste speakers move from a point where they are extremely forgotten and neglected to a place where at least there's some improvement in terms of recognition and their impact. So one of them was sensitization on their role, because it is very difficult to champion for your rights if you have no clue how you contribute to the system. So for waste speakers, it was a lot of sensitization and eye-opening in terms of, you know, that no recycling can happen unless you are present. You're the one who's recovering materials from the dump sites and bringing it back into the waste management value chain. So how are you going to, that is who you are and that is your contribution to that chain. So that was also important, and also travel to meet each other. It was very important for waste speakers in Nairobi to go to meet waste speakers in Nakuru, to be able to exchange and see that the issues are similar, and that if they can come together and speak in one voice, and if they have one representative, the issues that will be represented will still be the same despite the geographical distance. So as SEJAD, we've been able to assist waste speakers also to engage with policymakers. For instance, we saw a photo of John joining the UNEA. We felt that it was important for now the national leader to not just be advocating for work here within the Kenyan jurisdiction, but to also go and not only join the waste speakers at the global level, but also participate in the discussion that on issues that affect waste speakers at the global level, which is where he and Solidad and the other waste speakers put together that statement that was able to see waste speakers being recognized in the final resolution that mandates end of plastic negotiations by the international intergovernmental, that committee. I keep forgetting its name. Even if you can remember, you'll be able to share it. Yeah, so that committee to be able to negotiate the treaty by the end of 2024. SEJAD also supports waste speakers with scale-up linkages. For instance, there was a meeting that the waste speakers had with the University of Gothenburg and Rigo. Usually in the beginning, the meeting was just about peer-to-peer learning. And I have to recognize that as much as we think that we assisted, waste speakers have their connections. They have connections on their own. They've attended meetings before. And what SEJAD did here was just to transform that conversation from just peer-to-peer learning into something bigger, like now forming an association. And that is where we scale up those linkages, move the conversation from something simple to something that will impact their livelihood for the better in the long run. We had a training on waste assessment and brand audit, which, because I keep saying that they also need to grow in terms of skills and knowledge. So we had a training where they were able to learn how to carry out a waste assessment and brand audit. And also they keep carrying on cleanup. So we support them in this sense, trainings, and even if they needed financial support to go and do cleanups, we're happy to support that. They've had linkages with the private sector, such as the Kenya Private Sector Alliance on the plastic packs, waste plastics, those recyclers for e-waste. So there have been a lot of linkages that we have been able to establish and assist waste speakers meet the market. There was always a gap because there's always the waste speaker, and then there's the broker, and then many brokers in between, probably around 4, and then now the recycler and the other companies. So there was the need to bridge the gap and just ensure that there's a direct link between the waste speaker and the private sector and also the recyclers, so that they're able to get maximum benefit out of the work that they do in terms of remuneration. We also have involvement in participation of podcasts to amplify their work. Yes, waste because it's very important to tell their story. Like, for example, how Simon has stood up in several occasions to talk about the plight of waste speakers and, elevate the concerns. And that is what we're also trying to assist with John and the national leader, to be able to speak in as many platforms as possible, including those podcasts, with the help of GAIA, of course, just to share their story and how they'd like that story. Others are simple, like providing them with PPEs. We recognize that we can only do as much as provision of PPEs or hand gloves or aspirators. But what is necessary is for government to be the one to come in and make it their business to be able to provide them, because this is more sustainable than NGOs coming in and assisting. It's very good to assist because we help someone, but we want this to be long-term, and that is why we do provide, but also advocate for them to be able to link to government and laws and policies to recognize formally for this process to be sustainable. Next slide, please. So what do I foresee for what is the future of waste speakers following the mandate of a global platform? For me, it's simple. The recognition and inclusion of waste speakers, just by the fact that they appeared on that resolution, means that they have been recognized. And I'll be happy to read and quote exactly what that resolution said about informal workers, that the United Nations Environmental Assembly recognizing the significant contribution made by workers under the informal and cooperative setting to collecting, sorting, and recycling of plastics in many countries. So there's that mention of waste speakers in that case because they are informal. And there's another mention that the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee has, in its deliberation, considered the lessons learned and the best practices, including those from informal and cooperative settings. So as you can see, there's that riding on the lessons that waste speakers have been able to learn to make decisions. And that means that they are being included into the governance, into the dialogue on policy making. So after being recognized and included, then we have issues such as involvement in policy and governance dialogue, which is what I have mentioned. And then there's consideration of their work in the treaty or just translation. And that is saying, if really what we're trying to do is end plastic pollution, so what is going to happen to the work of the waste speakers? What's going to happen to them? So there's that consideration of what happens next. So that is what now we're terming as just transition. Are they going to be given an opportunity to work somewhere else, or how do they not necessarily remain jobless after this has been achieved in the long run? And then the waste speakers' welfare will be compulsory, just because we already see that recognition. We believe strongly that their welfare will change, either because they will be provided with material recovery facilities where they'll be able to work with safety protocols incorporated into that, and that is mandatory wearing of PPEs and also just aeration spaces and that mandatory sorting of waste. So all this will be welfare of waste pickers, and it will be compulsory if we're going to adopt if the treaty involves, that is actually agreed upon, involves that kind of. I know that there's a long way to go, because this is just a mandate for the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to start negotiating the treaty. The work is in actually making these issues mandatory and not voluntary, and this is what we hope will be able to assist the government even push. So that's what we will be advocating for strongly. Next slide, please. So I have a bit of photos here. So these were the sensitization meetings. This was us. Initially, I was saying we are the ones who went to the waste pickers, and they came in large numbers to attend those meetings. So the first is about that. And the one right below it is now, after we have sensitized a few, for example, the 30, it is their mandate now for the leadership to now go to other dump sites within the counties to sensitize the other waste pickers whom we did not reach in the meeting. And the other slide on leadership meetings is that after we had 4 counties, as I had mentioned before. So the leadership of the 4 counties came together for a leadership meeting. We trained how to be good leaders, how to use social media for advocacy, and how to manage finances and all that. So that was a leadership meeting, passing all the waste pickers from the project and counties. And we have global waste pickers constitution meeting. And this is where now the waste pickers in Kenya, the leadership of the waste pickers in Kenya came together to contribute towards the global waste pickers constitution, because we didn't want the issues and the views of the African perspective to be left out of the constitution of the global waste pickers treaty and constitution. Next slide, please. So we also have photos on the waste pickers press conference, and this was held in the Ndora dump site, like I mentioned, on 1st March. So we had waste pickers also from other countries join John in delivering of that that petition, and being part of a global conversation, so that it's just not about what is happening with this because of Kenya or the association or the welfare just within the Kenyan boundaries. What happens? How do we contribute globally, and even now in terms of the treaty? How are we moving together? How are the waste pickers moving together with others around the world? And next slide, please. All right, so this is just a photo again of sensitization meeting of one of the leaders in one of the dump sites, talking to people working in these transfer stations, waste pickers in this transfer station, just to tell them about what it is about this association and what benefits are going to come at the end of the association. And these are the people who actually, they are actually the citizens of the welfare, the National Waste Pickers Associations. They're the members, they're the ones who form the membership. So I know there's a lot of questions. John was supposed to come in before me to talk about the issues of waste pickers how we assisted them to formalize, but I will be able to answer a few questions where there are any gaps.
Great. Thank you so much, Dorothy, for sharing those insights on how CEJAD has been able to work with waste pickers in Kenya. And I see in the chat box that you do have some questions. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, I see that John has joined us. And for those of you who missed this earlier, we have John on the call, and John is from the Kenya National Waste Pickers Welfare Association. He's the chair of the organization and has been a critical advocate for waste pickers during this moment of UNEA 5 and mandating for a plastic treaty. So welcome, John.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carissa.
Great. Okay, so we're going to move on to the questions and answer session. And so we have one question from Anna in the chat box, and I think this is directed to you, Dorothy, but one from Anna on what would you do differently if you could go back in time? As an organization, as CEJAD working with waste pickers, is there anything you would have done differently, and maybe also why?
Okay, so there's one thing that over time I have come to learn, and that's having a census or having a database of waste speakers in your country. Because most of the time you'll be asked, how many waste speakers are you, or do you know are in Kenya? And there's a very huge gap in terms of understanding how many there are. So I feel like a census would be a great way to start. We have a database, but that database does not have the number of waste, because even in those particular dump sites that we've been able to reach, for instance, Dandora dump site, we don't have a census of all the waste speakers who are working there, and neither do we have in Nakuru. So I feel like in a different circumstance, we'd go that way for sure.
Great, thank you so much, Dorothy. And John, maybe I'll go to you next. So we have another question on how do you track the benefits coming from waste pickers being in an association? And so what are, maybe you could also talk a bit about how do waste pickers benefit from being in an association compared to working individually, and what are some of the benefits that come from that?
I think actually that is one of the prime purposes that we started organizing ourselves into these associations, because in the past that nobody really cared. All the institutions that were supposed to be like safeguarding our interest and welfare didn't. So one of the reasons that Waste Pickers Uniting in Kenya has been very helpful to the members of the association is that as we meet, we normally also bring in some healthcare fund ourselves, as much as it's little and it's something that is progressive. So we have managed, the case in the umbrella in Kisumu has very much managed to help most of its members that are having are in medical situations, and have actually saved the lives of some that were clearly on a very bad path health-wise. So this is one of the things that I would say that has really been a key point and an achievement of the association. The other thing is that we have not been having a voice to negotiate on some of the things and policies that are being passed by the local government. And being an association, and especially a registered one, has made our voice be heard, as much as we are still fighting more for this. But being there, United Association, and especially with the numbers that we are now gaining as the speakers, has made most of these county governments to recognize and notice the integral role we play, and to start stop assuming us, because for the longest time we've been a group that has been assumed. I would say that the dignity of West speakers in Kenya is something that has also not been there. And we've been called with there's a terminology known as chokora. Chokora is somebody who is related with anything bad, stealing, killing, raping. So we've been normally called that. And the fact that the whole country has been seeing West speakers organizing themselves in a better way has made them to start knowing that these are people that are also doing a very integral thing in our communities and cities, and the respect is starting to be there. And I would say that from my community, because I've been a speaker since I was a kid, and I've been seeing the change in the process of how I've been treated and how I'm treated now. So this is something that I would say that has kind of transformed the way and the perspectives to which people in our communities view West speakers and treat West speakers too. It's something that we are trying to change from the national government down to the people that we deal with on household levels and the people that we meet in the streets.
Thank you so much, John. Yeah, great. And I think just on that point is, so what I'm hearing from you is that the public perception is starting to change since waste pickers have been organizing themselves. And maybe Dorothy, the question that I have for you is, what can the public do to sort of streamline the work of waste pickers? And as organizations, how do we contribute to changing the public's perceptions on waste pickers' role? Dorothy, you're on mute.
I think, first of all, there's a lot of awareness creation that has to be done to the public, because we all know that everyone doesn't want to see waste in their houses. As soon as they begin to stink, you're looking for the next waste picker to come and collect them and take them. So there's that recognition from everybody that waste pickers are really important. But it's that point of differentiation that we don't know where it comes from. But John has explained how they're viewed as, all these negative connotations with waste pickers. But I feel like sensitization will be key to tell them that, the population at large that, yes, this person who is a waste picker is doing a job that you wouldn't do. Is this a job like any other? For instance, today, I wouldn't stand and say that I'm a doctor, that I could treat anybody. So their work is specialized, and that they should be recognized, and that they deserve to be, that some dignity has to come from that, taking out waste or things that you would not be able to use for them to use or divert back into the circular economy. And then there's also that aspect of creating awareness to the public to ask them to sort their waste, because this is very primary and basic. A lot of waste is going to, or are going to find their way back into the value chain if they are sorted at the point of generation. But if that's not happening, then it makes it very difficult for the waste pickers to recover these materials, because they're mixed with all sorts of things. Diapers are mixed with, bottles are mixed with, and I'm giving all the bad scenarios, menstrual, sanitary towels. So you'll find it's very difficult to recover in that situation. But if there's a lot of sorting that is happening, separation at the point of generation, I think that this will be a good place to start. But a lot of awareness has to be created for that. And then again, the bottom line, I'm insisting of awareness because we all know that we depend upon them, but we need to change how we view them. But those two key points, separating waste and ensuring that their work is recognized by everybody, would be key for me, for the public.
Great, thank you, Dorothy. And I see we have a question from Eamon. Thank you for your question. And I actually invite you to maybe unmute yourself, and you could direct your question to either Dorothy or John.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Carissa. I would just like to say first that I really appreciate the work that CIJA does in Kenya. It is, if I can find the words, for such work, I would just say it's just powerful, and I would like to congratulate you for that. As I said, I just noticed that there are many, a lot of common points when it comes to the challenges we are facing with engaging with waste pickers. We're talking about their unavailability, we're talking about their lack of trust towards local NGOs, lack of long-term vision. Those are really the same points where we are just trying to get through in our work. And then one of the main points I would love to highlight throughout my question is we noticed that there's a huge number of waste pickers that are only seasonal workers. They come from especially from the rural areas, and then they work at the city, and just they do their best to just find some seasonal jobs for money so that they can save money and send them to your families, etc. So it's been also complicated to raise their awareness of how important their job is for the environment and for local economy in general. I would like to know if, according to you, do you see an efficient way or an effective way to convince them that it can be, I mean, a long-term job, a long-term commitment, and also a sort of activism that goes beyond the material benefits. It is indeed a clear thing that they are more interested in immediate benefits, and they are more concerned about what, I mean, concerned about the amounts that they can earn, I mean, based on this work. So yeah, how could we do that?
So okay, you highlighted it correctly that some find themselves in those positions. And one of the other things that I would also like to highlight is for those who are not comfortable being waste speakers, because there will be, and it is very good to ask them to join the association, because through the association, they get more money in terms of returns. And with this money, they can be able now to venture into other things that they'd like to do. They could pay for school, they could pay for any other kind of work that they want to do, they could study. But first, with this situation that they're in, because they are waste speakers, just there's a long-term value, and to convince them was to see where opportunities are. For instance, if you join an association, you'll make more money and you'll be able to do exactly what you want to do, you'll study. Or if you join an association, your work environment will not be the same as is now. You'll be working in a material recovery facility, and you'll be dignified there because you have the correct PPE, you have the correct working space that is well aerated. So there's also that incentive in terms of how you work. You'll not just be working in a dump site anymore, which also comes with stigmatization and such kind of. So it's to see, as you work with waste speakers, is to see what opportunities lie ahead, and just bridge them into that, close the gap and show them where opportunities lie, and show them that even if they don't want to be waste speakers, even working in those material recovery facilities, they could be absolutely anywhere they want to be. And I had a conversation once with one of my friends when we were at the UNEA, and she was saying that, once the waste speakers have started to grow, there'll be some who are leaving the industry because they feel like, for example, just to give an example, John, for example, we will not expect John to go back again and start picking waste the way he used to pick, because there's that elevation. So there'll be more people who will be growing, and there'll be more people as long as they carry the vision of the association, but there'll be growth. So being in an association gives you the chance, a better chance of being somebody else, or being better than being being alone and working individually. So just bridge those gaps and show them the opportunities in the long term. And you can use the case of ours, for example, say in Kenya, maybe after the association, we have seen, for example, John has explained here that how he's viewed in the community is different than he was viewed before, based on how the association has been able to benefit them. So I think this would be one of the ways. It really relies on a lot of communication and convincing, but that's just the most that you can do at this point when you're trying to bring them together. Just convince them to see the opportunities and learn from what others have been able to benefit from. In my short answer, I hope it helps.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you so much, Dorothy. Thank you, Eamon, for your question. We have one more question in the chat, and we'll go through it quickly. Nyerere, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hello everyone. My appreciation for the opportunity to join this meeting. We at End Plastic Pollution, we are actually beginning to look into the issue of waste pickers, and to see how to best work with them, but also to see how to incorporate their work into our message against corporations. So we have realized that corporations like in Uganda, they are not working directly with waste picker organizations, and they decided to work with the middlemen who actually exploit the waste pickers. It is something we are trying to fight, and we are trying to break this, and we see that they work directly with the waste picker organizations. So how can we do that? if in case maybe in Kenya you have tried to look into it, and with your experience working with waste pickers, it's quite vast than ours who are just beginning to look into it. Yes, that's what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Nire, for the question. Yeah, John, you could go ahead first.
Oh, yeah. First, maybe I would like to go back to what Aman mentioned about the way like most of West speakers want like immediate gratification. I would say that one of the things that in a way CJAD helped us with is first to like build on our organizations and the fact that we had the capability and the knowledge to like properly manage ourselves, like kind of helped us to infiltrate and to know and to organize these waste speakers. So it's way much easier for me to go and organize anything in Dandora than for an NGO to come in Dandora and to try to organize those waste speakers. So this is way much easier for us because what I know for sure is that most of these some of the organizations and the government institutions think that waste speaker are people, because most of us are people that are not learned and not have like that formal education and the experience. They think that most of these things we cannot do ourselves. So they sideline us and try to come in and to do these things for us by themselves without really knowing what we are entirely going through and the experiences that we are having. So I think that is the disconnect that is also there, that most of the times waste speakers are not being like directly involved in certain processes that they can very well execute. And this is one of the things that I would say that CJAD really helped us with through also the training. After the training, I would say that all of us like kind of went back to their specific communities and to their specific colleagues that they normally deal with every day. And I think this model is very effective. That is to what Aman mentioned earlier. So the other thing that Nerera, I think that you mentioned is about like the case scenario in Uganda where like the middlemen like kind of are on the top of the pyramid. I think I don't know about that case, but I know for sure that it is something that if it's not really exploiting the waste speakers there, then it's something that is going to fail, because I don't know how they are sustaining it. And I don't know how like the waste speakers organizations there work, because at some point this is something that should not be there, because in a way when there are middlemen in between, there's a group of people like taking the resources that waste speakers should be taking from the work that they do on the ground. And this is something that has made like most of the waste speakers not be entirely engaged in the job, because we get so little out of the work that you end up finding that most waste speakers are not permanently employed in it, because they have to like sort other ways to get finances to supplement on what the little that they get on the job. So I think this is something that I'm personally fighting in Kenya. It is there. I won't lie. It is something that is there, but we are really fighting it as a national association. That I'm so sure that in the next few years it will be something that will be, if not totally done with, then it will be at a very big percentage gone. This is something that I would say that is really affecting the lives of waste speakers, because I know for sure when waste speakers unite, we can build so much. I talk from a perspective where I've seen literally from our association. We just came together a few years back, and we have done massive. We have through the little we get, we have set up health finances for our members. This is something that has never happened before in the history of waste speakers of Kenya. And this is something that is now really working. And I would say that we are managing it ourselves and it's working. So at any point where like there's an external person coming to totally organize and totally run the show for waste speakers, yet they're the people like actually doing and knowing what is really happening. I think that is where the disconnect normally comes from, and that is what is really hurting us.
Yes, and I'd just like to add on to that point, good points, John, that first of all, as you're trying to work with waste speakers, and the question was how corporations can be pushed to work with waste speakers. You know, most of the time, if waste speakers are not organized yet, it becomes a little bit difficult to ask corporations to work with a group of people, because then that will rub also another group badly, and they'll come and say, why are you working with them, not us? So if the focus is first of all to have them self-organize into an association, whether it's counties or municipalities. So as a county or as a municipality, you're speaking in one voice, and then there's a national, whichever way you choose to go. But there has to be something that makes them converse as one, so that there's no clashing or there's no fighting or there's no rafts in between. But then again, in our case for Kenya, I remember, and John, you correct me if I'm wrong, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance reached out to us after realizing that waste speakers are coming together to form an association. These corporations will just reach out to you. Sometimes it's not about pushing. They see an opportunity for working with people who are organized and formalized, and they may reach out to you as well. So if the focus is building a strong association of waste speakers, then a lot of opportunities come from that just by having a united waste speakers organization. So, and just to complement John's point, is always to leave them to be the ones who carry the discussion. Sometimes what we do is just support them to be in these spaces. But you see, like now, for example, what John is doing is speaking from a point of experience. I came in later to understand the work of waste speakers, but he's speaking from a point of experience, and this is such the experience that you bring to the table and let them take the lead role. And so that has also been an opportunity, just bringing their leadership to certain spaces and let them talk about their plights and talk about how they want to partner even with those corporations. Yeah. But for middlemen, like John is saying, the middlemen are there, but the vision of the association, having spoken to the other leaders, for example, the county leaders, is that how do we bridge the gap? Once we are an association, like John is saying, that they are now, they can speak to people now, for example, like I had mentioned, Reels Plastics, to say that we have this much plastics, and as an association, we are selling it at this price. They have a bargaining power just because, again, they're an association. So there's a lot of opportunities that comes with it. And at the end of the day, the middlemen will be eliminated from the process if truly the organization can come together. And then again, I insist on a leadership that carries the vision of the association, because if they don't, then it means that most of these activities will again go to benefit them, and so will not benefit the association. So the trickling down effects will not be there. But if you have a leader, for example, like John, who speaks for the association and say, for Nairobi, this is what we have as waste speakers plastics. We are selling it at this price. And all the waste speakers are working under the association. Then again, it will be difficult to have other waste speakers on the side who are not in the association, because they are speaking as one voice. So that elimination of different ideas is completely eliminated by organizing. I think the strength is in coming together of the waste speakers, and then from there, opportunities begin to open up. I hope this.
Thank you so much, Dorothy, and thank you, Nivera, for the question. So again, just thank you everybody for joining us. We are at time, but I do see we have 2 other questions which we will attend to offline. And hopefully from the session, you've walked away with a fresh perspective on waste speaker organizing. We will also share the links to where you can find today's recording and the presentation slides from our speakers afterwards. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their day and a good weekend.
Thank you, Carissa, for hosting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Carissa, for hosting us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.